give you an example. We've got some folks that have come up from Louisiana. They know there was a legendary sheriff in our state, Sheriff Harry Lee. He's larger than life. And I could spend all day telling you stories about our famous sheriff. He passed away tragically. But I'll tell you just one story from 2005 in Katrina to illustrate what I mean about picking people over regulations and bureaucracy. Literally, in the hours after the storms, the first couple of days after the storm, I went down to Jefferson Parish where Harry Lee is sheriff. Found him in his makeshift backup office. His main office was not usable. He was in his backup office. Went in there and found Harry yelling through a phone at some unnamed, faceless bureaucrat. Now, I'll have to edit his language. But I'll share with you an edited version where he was basically telling this person across the phone. You have to understand the situation. And when he finally got calmed down and asked him what had happened, the water was so high. There was an interstate entrance and exit ramp that was being used as a boat launch to go and rescue people who were literally still in their homes or on their rooftops stuck in the water. And there was simply more people to be rescued, not enough people to rescue them. So the good sheriff had gotten on the radio and he put out a plea for help. He said, anybody out there that's hearing me, that's got a boat, that has the ability to, please come to this boat launch. We need help getting people out of the water. And they came. Entire sheriff's departments from all over the state came, fishermen came, all kinds of volunteers came to help their fellow citizens. It was amazing, it was remarkable to see. And then when you know it, as all these wonderful volunteers were showing up in their boats, going and launching their boats and going and rescuing people, some bureaucrats took it upon themselves to show up at the boat launch, an interstate exit ramp. And he began to tell people, you're not allowed to go in the water unless you brought proof of insurance and registration. He was literally looking for paperwork in people's lives for his state. The sheriff was so irate, he was getting into an argument with these bureaucrats, and he finally got so mad. And in a way that only Harry Lee could, he said, look, I'm the sheriff. We're going to continue to launch these boats and rescue these people, and if you don't like it, you can come arrest me. I was listening to his side of the conversation. I said, Sheriff, I agree with you. That just makes sense. We've got to save people's lives. Before I know it, he's back on the phone going, I've got Congressman Bobby Jindal here. If you don't like it, you come arrest him too. I said, Harry, you'll have to protect me in jail. Harry was a lot bigger guy than I am. But he got it right. I asked him later what he ended up doing. He said, well, what they just ended up telling people was come around the corner where the bureaucrat was and they still let them go out in the water. The fourth lesson. You don't succeed by waiting for FEMA to tell you what to do. You tell them what you need. We didn't wait for the federal government to tell us what to do. We had a game plan. Being ready on the front end is 3/4 of the battle. That applies to families, businesses, and agencies. The next lesson, I know that you know this well. You've got to see it through to the end. And the end is long after the national press has moved on to the next thing. Is when your citizens have gotten back to normal. And I've heard that over and over, and I couldn't agree with you more. There will be another disaster. There will be another international story. There will be another incident, and the country will move on. But that doesn't mean the hard work is finished. Next lesson is you got to keep the public informed on all of the details. You do it early, you do it often, you do it without fanfare. Transparency inspires confidence. Confidence promotes cohesion. Now look, the government is crucial, but the private sector is too. In many instances, a motivated private entity can move faster than a public entity. And as leaders, we need to enable that to happen. I'll give you an example, going back to Hurricane Katrina. After I left Sheriff Lee in Jefferson Parish, later, in that same time period, went down to St. Bernard Parish. One of our parishes got hit first and hardest by Katrina, even before the storm had made its way into New Orleans. Went down there and saw the sheriff down there, Sheriff Stevens. And I talk a lot about the sheriffs. In many cases, they were the last ones to leave their post and the first ones to come back. Sometimes never leave their post until everybody was safe, until everybody had been rescued, everybody had been accounted for. Went down there and they set up what they call Camp Katrina, out of a morbid sense of humor. They were literally pulling people out of the water. Literally still pulling people with boats and going out there and rescuing people. I get down there and you can tell the sheriff was amazed. They almost felt forgotten down there. Got down there and said, Jack, what do you need? And I'm sure he thought he'd never see us again. So he gave us his list. He said, well, we need everything. Well, what we really need, he gave us a list. It was food and water. He said we need vehicles. Our vehicles have been washed out, they've been flooded out. We still need trucks to go on the high water to go rescue people. He said we need ammunition. I don't know about you, you never want to hear a sheriff tell you, hey, we got an idea though. We called up, there happened to be a vice president of Ford Motor Company that we used. He was from Louisiana. Called him up and said, hey, look, the sheriff needs these things. They're desperate. They're rescuing people out of the water. We don't want to wait for the bureaucracy. Literally within hours, this vice president called us back and said he located a bunch of trucks. They provide the keys. He said, if you can find drivers, you can have the trucks. It was as simple as that. There's no paperwork, no bureaucracy. He said, we'll figure it out afterwards. We know you need the trucks now. Go get them. You know what I love about America? We're a competitive country. So we had this great idea. We called up the other motor company. The Ford Motor Company just made this generous donation. We know the reporter's going to call. What do you want us to tell them you did? Sure enough, they donated vehicles. We literally had students and church volunteers go deliver those trucks, those original batch of trucks. You should have seen the eyes of the deputies and the sheriff. He told me later, he said, Bobby, I never thought y'all were coming back. He said, we just told you we needed these things. But it amazed him. Indeed, months later, he said they were still waiting for their vehicles from the federal government and from the bureaucracy. They got from the private sector vehicles much more quickly. The faith community was critical to our recovery. Government needs to empower it to do its good work. And it wasn't just the companies. If I start listing companies and faith-based groups, I'm going to leave somebody out. We literally saw local bottlers donate thousands of bottles of water to residents devastated by the storm. We did the same thing this year. During Gustav and Ike this year, we used the private sector. We partnered with them like never before. We had an entire task force team utilizing donations from the private sector, the faith-based community. Let me give you a few examples. Anheuser-Busch donated thousands of cans of water and trucks of ice to shelters across the state. Barnes & Noble organized tens of thousands of books to be delivered to shelters across the state. Home Depot donated 25 generators to help power law enforcement and local government in Houma, Baton Rouge, and other places. Lamar Advertising, I know we've got some folks from Lamar here, broadcast emergency messages on behalf of the state on their electronic billboards in Baton Rouge, Hammond, and elsewhere. Microsoft established a mobile internet center at the State Farm Shelter up in northeast Louisiana. Target donated 3,800 comfort kits, including toiletries and other basic goods. Walmart supplied the state with 2 corporate planes that transported 3 shelter teams to Birmingham.